What's up, everybody? It's your boy, StephenMotivate. Back again with another set of Turo tips for you. Super excited to give you these. Hopefully you're checking out these on our channel and you're enjoying them. So let's get into it. I think we are on tip number 21. Keep your car listed on Facebook Marketplace to help generate rentals. Keep your car listed on Facebook Marketplace to help generate rentals. So super good tip here. Make sure you're marketing outside of Turo. You got to remember, Turo is a marketing platform. First and foremost, they are essentially just marketing your car for you to potential guests that would want to share cars. So there are probably other places that people are looking around that aren't on Turo. This doesn't necessarily mean you have to do private rentals. It does, however, give you more exposure to folks to bring them into Turo's platform. So you're actually helping Turo and helping your own business by saying, hey, we've got cars that we're willing to share, and see what type of hits you get. And if you're doing that, then the days when Turo is slow and that sort of thing, at least you're able to get and generate some conversations from some interest, some demand interest for your cars from other folks. Now, what's going to happen here is many times people aren't going to either be eligible for Turo or they won't know about Turo. So it gives you an opportunity to sign them up to Turo in order to get them to rent your car through that platform. So you're telling them about the car, you're showing really great pictures on your Facebook Marketplace listing. It'll probably get a lot of hits because you can say a car for rent or car for sharing, and you put a low price on there. You start to get people trying to rent that vehicle, and so you'll likely get a lot of traction there. But again, you may have to walk them through what it would be like to set up on Turo to see if they get approved. Turo has a way where they approve drivers, and so if they don't get approved there, that may be a red flag not to rent to them. But if they do get approved and this is their first trip, you just were able to generate your own business and use Turo's platform and payment processor to bring more money into your business. So that's just a good way to drum up activity. If you've got cars sitting on Turo that aren't getting any activity, have you put them on Facebook Marketplace? And that's just analogous to any other marketplace that could be out there. So where else could you post them? Could you post it on Reddit pages? Could you post it on, I don't know, do people still use Craigslist? Can you post it on your Instagram or your TikTok? Run ads to let people know you have cars available. That is one way to drum up business. You can't only rely on Turo to bring the business to you. It's a very good tip to also get out there and try to drum up some business for yourself. You're going to want to have great pictures. You're going to want to get familiar with what the typical questions would be. The typical questions that might get you might receive or you might hear from guests. Just get used to answering those questions quickly and efficiently so it's not a big time drag for you, so you can copy and paste your responses to people, because the thing about drumming up more activity, right, is that you also run the risk of having to waste more time talking to people that aren't really serious. But as they say in sales, sometimes it takes seven leads to get to one yes, or 7 touches to get to a yes. So you might have to deal with more traffic, more people reaching out to you. But if you do this, then it will give you an opportunity to at least see what other customers you can bring to the table, right? You don't just have to wait on Turo to bring you business. So really good tip. It certainly worked for me in the past to, hey, I'm not getting many rentals, then let me see what I can drum up through Facebook Marketplace, which has been my go-to there. So that's tip number 21, I believe. Facebook Marketplace is a good place to keep your car listed. And you got to go in there. Another piece to that, go in there and just make sure you're refreshing your listing, because it will get old. If it's been there for a while, less people will see it. So you got to go in, refresh it, renew it, make sure it's still up to date and whatnot. And that could help you get some business. And frankly, that could go for all businesses. Go where the people are at and make sure you're marketing to them. Go where the people are at and make sure you're telling them what you have to offer them. It's not that people don't want to rent cars. You probably got your car on Turo and thinking, no one's booking. What am I doing wrong? Well, it could be just that there aren't people that know that your car is available. So you got to use other means to let people know that you might have a solution to their problem, right? Turo is just one place to let people know, but there are other places you can go to let people know, hey, if you need a car, I have one, right? So we've seen all types of things, and this does bleed nicely into the private rental business, because this kind of sets you on that path of, how do I generate my own activity? How do I generate my own demand? How do I find people that have this problem, right? A lot of business in general is providing a solution to folks that have a need or a problem. So what problem are you trying to solve? With car sharing, you're trying to provide vehicles to people that wouldn't otherwise have them, or don't have them at the time and place they need them. Sometimes people coming in for vacation, it's not that they don't own a vehicle, it's that they don't have it at the time or the place that they're currently at. So you are their solution to that problem, and they just need it temporarily. So make sure you're doing that. It bleeds nicely into the private rental space. It gives you some lessons on how to generate your own activity, so you're not relying completely on Turo. So that's tip 21. Let's look at another tip since we have a little bit more time. The other tip is you have to think about what insurance plan you're on. So the insurance plan is, as Turo says, it's not really insurance, it's a protection plan. So what Turo protection plan are you on? And I would say, if I were you, consider the higher insurance plan if you want the risk and can afford the $2,500 repairs. So I've done both. I've done where the protection plan is, 60%, where Turo's getting 40%, and you're taking home 60% of the earnings, but Turo's responsible. In some cases, and I don't know if this is true or not, but in some cases I felt like I got better guests and even more activity because Turo is making more money potentially. I don't know if that's completely true. I'd have to, really analyze that to find out. But the 60 plan is not bad. I'm not going to say that's bad, but I still recommend the 90% plan, because you take home more of the revenue, and taking home more of the revenue in the long run, I think, is better. So at the time that I wrote down these tips, I think I had evaluated about 700 trips, and my analysis showed that I had about 30 issues out of the 700 trips, about 30 issues. So that was roughly 4.2% of the time. So let's just call it 4 to 5% of the time you're going to have an issue. So out of every 100 trips, 5 trips are going to be headaches. There's going to be a problem. There's going to be an issue. And so I think if you can afford the $2,500 repairs, so if you're not familiar with the protection plan, essentially 60%, you don't have to pay anything out of pocket. Turo will cover any damage that occurs to your vehicle after you prove that you actually had damage, which that can be a tricky thing, annoying, and Turo cannot be super helpful as it relates to that. But we're not talking about that right now. We're simply saying that, explaining to folks that if you have a protection plan and you're on the 60, I feel like they do give you a good portion of business. They do allow customers to come to you and help your utilization. I think it's because they're making a significant amount of money too. But on the 90% plan, and there's plans in between, but on the 90% plan, if something occurs, right, you have to basically pay $2,500 yourself before Turo kicks in. Now, technically, you don't really have to come out of pocket anything on large repairs, because on a super large repair, then Turo will just say, hey, we think this is an $8,000 repair. We're going to deduct your $2,500 and you'll be left with the remaining, what's 8 minus 2,500? So 5,500. So you'll be left with the remaining 5,500. We think it costs 8,000 to get this repaired. We'll give you 5,500 to get started. Well, many times they're just doing this through pictures and they don't really know all the damage. And so if you go have a body shop guy or a mechanic guy, which I've talked about in other videos, they can tell you what really the cost will be, and they can work with you. So Turo ends up taking on a portion of that fee, especially if they get it wrong. Maybe it's actually $10,000 to get it done. So now you've got an extra, what is that? If it's another 1,500 or 2,000 to work with. So you're at 7,500 at that point. I hope that makes sense. So essentially, if you're on the 90% plan and something happens and it's a large repair, Turo will, they don't expect you to send in money anywhere. They expect you to work it out, and they just subtract it from what they think it's going to cost to repair it. Now, in the case that you are, you're on the 90% plan, right? And it's not a major repair. It's a repair that actually costs a bit less. This is where it gets tricky, because one, if you can't prove that the customer did it or Turo can basically be like, well, it's under $2,500. We're not going to help you at all. And in most cases, if it's a small repair, let's say if it's a scratch from the underbody of the vehicle, well, if you didn't get pictures of that specific spot before the trip started, then they're not going to cover it. Now, even if you did get pictures, if it's under $2,500, they're not going to pay out anything. They're going to say, well, we think that's $1,000, so we're not going to pay you anything. You got to figure it out. And unless you have a body shop and a mechanic that knows that piece costs more, then you can kind of fight it, but that becomes kind of strenuous. But even on the 60% plan, let's say you got that same underbody damage. If you don't have the perfect pictures, then you still won't get coverage. So the logic here is that if you won't really, when I have full coverage on the protection plan, and there are cases where you won't fully cover me without me basically presenting my case so thoroughly, so factually, so buttoned up like a lawyer would, if I don't do that, then you're not going to approve or cover it. On the 60% plan, where I'm only making 60% of the money, Turo's making 40%. If I got to go through all those hoops to try to get coverage, and then in some cases you still aren't going to cover me, then I might as well do the 90% plan where I get 90% of the revenue, Turo gets 10%, because I know that on the small stuff, they're likely not going to cover anyway, and they will cover the big stuff. It's just that they're going to take $2,500 off the top. And with it only being 5% of the time that I'm dealing with issues in general, small or big, then it tends to work in your favor to focus on a protection plan that I think is the 90% one. Now, you do need to be prepared that there's just stuff they won't cover. And so if you don't have that type of revenue coming in, if you can't come up with $2,500, then probably stay away from the plan. But if you really picked up or are able to read between the lines on what I'm describing today, there is a chance, if you've got the right body shop guy, the right mechanic guy, to not actually have to come out of pocket on that. And that's why if you're in my program, if you're working with me on what I advise people to do, I typically tell people to do the 90% protection plan for those reasons. So it's a major part of the business to figure out what protection plan that you should be working through and working on. So if you have a protection plan that is on the lower side, best of luck to you. Try to make as much money as you can. You never have to deal with the upside risk of, paying out or being deducted $2,500. If you're on the higher side, then you're going to be making more money in the short term, and just hold some of that back for when there's an accident, because 5% of the time there will be. So you got to put some of that money back to make sure you're prepared for those unforeseen circumstances. So that is tip number 22. So hopefully that helps you the way it helped me. As a recap, we talked about tip number 21, which was make sure you're marketing your vehicle on your own. Facebook Marketplace is a good place to start as it relates to that. Just put your photos up, put your car up, let people know that they can rent this car. It's a good place to draw up some demand. And number 2 is if you're setting up your Turo and you're trying to figure out what protection plan to go with, based on the information I've given you, I recommend going with the 90% plan, but you don't have to start there. You can start with the 60% plan and kind of slowly edge up if you want. I think both are fine. It really depends on your situation. But if you're asking me what I do the 90% plan. Allows myself to get more of the revenue in. And then when there is a situation, I'm prepared to handle that. And I have connections with my body shop guy and mechanic guy. So, yeah, that's it. That's the Turo tips for today. Look, if you enjoyed this, I only ask that you do one thing, that you share it, you comment, you leave some feedback. I guess that's 3 things. But if it helped you the way it helped me, let somebody else know about it. If you know somebody that's looking for a good side hustle or wants to get into Turo and trying to figure out if Turo is the right thing for them, these tips might help them in their market. For Turo, every market is different. And so there are some markets where folks do really well. There are some markets where folks don't do well at all. But either way, most of these tips in our Turo tips playlist will help you in general and give you some information about how to run a successful Turo business. So, again, as always, stay motivated. This is your boy, StephenMotivate. Until next time, peace.